Serious and they take me, man. What are you talking about?
Because I am the jester and I make the good jokes. Anyway,
that's right.
Who's gonna explain this?
Well, that's debatable. Just like what this show's all about. You see, that's a segue.
That's how it's unscripted. This all stays in, by the way. Fuck it.
Yeah, I know.
I know. Keeping it all in.
Well, that's a good podcast. Shows you everything. But no,
it doesn't.
The fun ones do. All right. Like when Kevin Smith was high doing podcasts. They were always the best. Anyway.
He's got a guy. He for sure has a guy who edits the podcasts. Why wouldn't he? He has money.
They used to not, actually, the early ones. But, what he did was had a guy that would just put, music in the background in the early ones, and after a while they just stopped doing that.
The porn saxophone or, elevator music?
No, just, random songs that matched what they were talking about, whatever it was. So, it was kind of wild and weird. But that was 2000.
That's considerably less funny.
Yeah, but it was 2007. Nobody was podcasting then except him. Anyway,
podcasting sucks anyway.
Yeah, so why are we doing it?
Don't listen to this.
So why are we doing this, folks? We're doing this.
The better question is, what are we doing?
Yeah, well, let's answer that first then. So we were talking a while ago, and Kenny came up with this great idea where it's I have opinions. I get on my soapbox. He has opinions. He gets on his soapbox. Why don't we just do it as a podcast and do it in a more structured way? Because we both like games. You've probably seen our stream, twitch.tv/partygoblins. Get that plug in now. And, we like talking about games, and we have very different tastes when it comes to games. So we thought,
mine are better.
And it starts. But, the idea was, let's take some games that we both played, and let's talk about them, and let's, think of, different things that we can talk about and debate about those games. Some of which can be coming from media, some of which can be just from, our own thoughts and opinions, most of which are, stuff fans have talked about for a while, and then we'll try and come to a mutual verdict, but we'll also let you, the listeners, decide as well what you think.
I'm just going to give a summary. Hey, the internet has opinions about games that we've played. We're going to tell you why you're wrong. There you go.
Well,
there you go. That simple.
Well, I didn't want to say it outright, but if you want to just go that route.
Why not? It's a podcast. What the fuck are we going to do, huh?
We're just going to record this. And the game we chose to start us off is...
Bad Rats.
No.
2.
Fuck Bad Rats. Anyway, that's an opinion that everybody has. But the game we chose to start us off actually is The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, which Kenny and me I did recently played it on Twitch stream, and Kenny was there encouraging the entire time, and it was an experience, and let's talk about it. Because
we came up with 7 questions that we got from the internet. Mostly top 10 questions from some random ass stupid website that didn't deserve the revenue it got from ads. But who the fuck cares? I'm not salty. I'm not salty at all. They get the half ad revenue, but I don't. Who cares?
You seem a little salty there, Kenny. Is that just a pinch? It's like sea salt in there.
Sure. Who starts?
Well, we should maybe we should go through.
We should give it headers.
Yeah,
it's we should. One of us should say the game stands accused of, and then I'll clip that and I'll add an echo to it.
You know what?
And I'll edit that in.
Well, I don't know if we need an echo,
and
but we can.
You should say it too.
No, I'll say it. I can do that. The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, released in 2014.
No. Say the line. The game stands accused of.
I was going to do an intro first, then do that. Anyway.
No, we're going to clip it.
Okay.
This stays in too, by the way.
All right. Are you ready? The game stands accused of.
There you go. And now you can say whatever the fuck you want. And if I have something to rebut with, I don't know.
So we're going to get this started, and we're going to just go with a bang. The Witcher 3 is a game that stands accused of being the best game in the series. So far, because, spoiler alert, they're making a fourth one.
My vote is yes.
My vote is no. So, you knew this might be coming early, so we're already starting with fireworks. You want to start? Why yes?
Yeah, I've got a fucking watch list.
Go for it. Give me the list.
So, what are the rules? What are the gentlemanly rules? Do you just interrupt me, or like, do you write down your rebut, or like, I don't know.
I would say. See, you can tell we planned this ahead of time. I would say. We did, just not this part. I would say give your thoughts first. I'll give my rebuttal, then we can discuss it. How about that?
All right, sure. Well, my first point is, comparatively, Witcher 2 really only has the story going for it. We're not considering Witcher 1 in this debate because 1, we both hate it.
Yes.
By the way.
Yeah, that one we agree on.
But yeah, my first point is Witcher 2 only really has a story going for it. Everything else is improved in Witcher 3. That's point 1.
Okay.
A sub-point of that is combat flows better in 2. The loot system, although it's still not great, leaves much choice to the player, as scaling doesn't happen too harshly over mere few levels. Though armor could be done better, but the Witcher sets become ubiquitous to the end, so it's done barely fucking matters. Also, seems to reasonably incorporate decisions from Witcher 2. And Witcher 2 doesn't actually incorporate from Witcher 1. I don't think it does it?
It does not. I don't believe it does.
There you go. Point for me. That's a joke. Maybe not. Who knows? Except Yolveth, who seems to have been cut out of necessity. I actually looked that up. You said he got cancelled, right? But
well, I never said he got cancelled. I just said that I said that jokingly. I said that he was not in the game, and it was kind of a shame he wasn't in the game.
Because he said anti-trans stuff, I think you said. The voice actor, not Yorveth.
Of Yorveth did that? No, not Yorveth. No, that's a different guy. That's Dragon Age with Cullen.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's Dragon Age, buddy. And we'll get to that someday.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
We'll get to that someday. The oil and potion system is also largely improved. Mm-hmm. It mainly removes the tedium, which I love, because it's like you just need some alcohol as to like refill all of them, which even though that's realistically doesn't make super sense, but fucking who cares. Gameplay above immersion. We could have that discussion with fucking Red Dead Redemption 2, but that's not now.
Yeah.
And the concoctions, they're kind of forgettable if you don't really think about them, but to be honest, the way you're looking at them, they can complement a very specific playstyle if you dedicate to them. It's just that you'd have to really love the game to do that, but it lets you. That's good. And then the skill tree, skill tree in 2 is so bot. Like, come on, it's all just stat bonuses in 2. And then maybe some, like, you can throw knives now. It's like, yay, thumbs up. In 3, you could do whip flippy dippy shit. You could do pirouettes. It's great. You could decapitate a cowboy, you're turning into Geralt from League of Legends. Shit's great. Though some of these skills are kind of useless. But at least some of them are useful. And I think that's about it that I've got.
Well, here's what... First off, I'm just going to say it. Witcher 2, I think, is the better game. Part of the reason for it is its structure and the fact that it's actually telling a very tight story, obviously. One of the big problems for Witcher 3 for me has always been the fact that the open world gets in the way of the narrative of Witcher 3. The structure of the game is same as Witcher 2, but the abundance of extra things with very few deviations to the style and the mechanics of it, such as the overuse of the Witcher sense, the sort of like pinpoint A, B, and C here to go to all these different locations and not doing much, just become monotonous. And narratively, like, there's a sense of urgency in Witcher 3 that you never feel because the open world does get in the way, whereas that urgency in Witcher 2 is always there and always present because it's very tight in terms of how it's trying to get you from A to B to C with its main story. It also helps that the story, because of that focus, allows for deviation within the game that adds a lot more replayability. Say for a couple of the key main quests in Witcher 3, there's multiple angles you can take in Witcher 2. Not just beyond like the Roach and Yorvith choice, but it's also the like mini choices, like, for example, does the mayor die in Flotsam or not? Do you kill or rescue Triss or whatever, something of that nature. All of that comes into play in different playthroughs there. That structure helps the game a lot. In terms of mechanics, yeah, I can concede the fact that, signs and potions are easier to use, but the combat is still the same problem. And frankly, the combat is terrible in both games. It's the same type of combat. It's trying to do sort of a parry type action system, and it fails at it in both games. And while the mechanics work a little better due to signs and potions in Witcher 3, you lose a little bit of that immersion with how you set things up in Witcher 2, as clunky as it was through the menus and meditating. The progression is also very toothless in 3 compared to 2, I would say, because of that. Lower level cap, which helps it, I would argue. And while the progression for the skill trees is not the best, the progression for the skill tree in 3 is basically...
Lower level cap is an option.
True.
In the options.
Fair enough. But I think the lower level cap actually is a benefit in that case, then, because you have this progression in 3 where they're throwing all these things at you, but there's really only about a dozen things that are probably worth using. Weapons and armor are less emphasized compared to it in 2. You pointed that out already.
How?
And
No, not less. In general.
Yeah, well,
I didn't care about the armor system in 2 either.
Well, I would argue the armor system in 2 actually had at least a point to it, and the fact that you can actually find armor sets for actually completing certain quests that were unique is a decent reward to have, even if you're only using them for portions of the game at a time. Finally, there's a lack of choice in Witcher 3 compared to Witcher 2. And this one's kind of I'm going to thread the needle a little bit. Some of the actual choices present in Witcher 3, and we're going to discuss them, obviously, are good and decently written, but they only come at the end of, long-tail story quest lines. I can think of maybe, 4 in the main game that would match the same level as what we would see with almost all the choices found in Witcher 2. Whereas Witcher 2...
How many major choices were in 2?
Well, you have, the choice between, for example, Roach Yorvith. I already mentioned, are we rescuing Triss or not? How are we going to be helping, or are we not going to be helping the siege if we go with Yorvith? How are we going to attack them and the city with Roach? Who do we actually pick to live and die in some cases with some of these choices as well? Are kind of important because they do kind of help coalesce into where the narrative goes. Whereas Witcher 3...
I feel like that stuff happens in 3 as well.
It does to an extent, but it really is only about 4 story decisions that I can think of. Another one of which actually involves Roach with Dijkstra and all that stuff. You have the Baron and what happens with him. You have the stuff with Triss and the stuff with Ciri. And
Yennefer.
Excuse me, okay,
and
5.
The Druids.
You're right.
And a lot of small stuff in Novigrad. Well, not small stuff, honestly. You can decide some stuff in Novigrad as well. There's some stuff in Velen. That's more tying into the smaller decisions that you said there weren't a lot of, but it's there's lots of ways that the smaller questions can turn out different. The witches in Velen, that alone is a huge choice. The way you treat the Baron, I think.
I mentioned the Baron. I did mention the Baron. And the witches, I would say, are tied to the Baron, specifically in that case.
Fair enough.
But a lot of those smaller quests, there's really very little to them. They are, side content, and I'm going to say this point a little bit...
For the sake of world building, though.
Sake of world building, but I'm going to make this point later. There's side content that, at best, is more passable versions of Radiant quests.
It's still better, and it's 2015,
Yeah. Well, from 3 years.
I think I'm going to make this argument later, but you gotta understand, this is like a 2015 game, and around that time, we didn't really have a whole lot of games that were action-y, that were like really open world that people fucking enjoyed. Because, well, what do we have? I think I had a note about that somewhere, but basically we had like a bunch of Assassin's Creeds, 13 and 14, and as much as you might like 3 and 4, you didn't play them for like the small stuff on the map. That was just collectathon bullshit. At least in Witcher 3, there were actual proper mini quests.
You're talking about Assassin's Creed 3 and 4.
3 and 4,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
The side stuff. Like, if you take out the main story, what do you have in 3 and 4?
And then, yet, the counterpoint to that is Oblivion, and to an extent, even things like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas did them much better with less resources and even less fidelity. And also,
I'm not going to argue against Oblivion.
I don't think anybody will.
3 has like 5 good ones.
See, now this is...
I guess I can say 6 because of Nuka-Cola, which I don't count, but it's whatever.
We could save that for like a Fallout 3 episode, but I'm gonna point out, like, I will always argue that while I think Fallout 3, comparatively to like New Vegas especially, is not as good of a role-playing experience, world immersion and how the quests are structured in 3, I think, is actually really strong. But that is, again, a conversation for another day.
I feel like if you're going to compare side quests of Witcher 3 to side quests in Fallout 3, and you're going to argue in favor of Fallout 3, I feel like you're going to be high on something. No. Absolutely not.
Let's put it this way. I still remember quests from Fallout 3 almost like 15 years on. I just played Witcher 3. I can only remember one side quest from it. And it was a side...
But how many monsters do you remember? Because most of them were about a specific monster.
You're right. I barely remember the monsters.
Because that's what they were usually about.
But exactly, and I barely remember anything about the monsters. They all blend together.
Do you think that's because you kind of went in being against the game?
Are we like talk about inherent bias?
A little bit.
Did I go in? See, now, all right, full disclosure, I played Witcher 3 before I started streaming it. I didn't get that far in it because I wasn't really into it. I didn't really like it that much.
You didn't get out of the first area.
I did not get out of the first area. You are correct. What
was it called again? Fucking, I'm bad with names.
The White Orchard or something like that, I believe.
White Orchard.
Yeah.
That's the one.
I knew about different things.
That was just a tutorial.
Yeah. I knew about different things outside of the first area, but like I didn't experience or play it specifically. Again, I fully admit, like during the stream, yes, I did come around a lot on Witcher 3, and I think it is a better game than I gave it credit for, but I will still argue that in terms of enjoyment for me, like, and this is more of a personal thing, I guess, maybe as well, I'm a big fan of like tight narrative. I'm a big fan of a story that does find ways to keep me engrossed and engaged. RPGs like Witcher 3 are in the same vein as like a Fallout or an Assassin's Creed, where you have the world, you have all these things to do, but a lot of it kind of comes across as like you're chasing it for the reward, the level, the busy work, the gold, or whatever else. You're not getting enriched necessarily. And
you're high on something.
I'm high on my thoughts. And you're getting, there are exceptions to that rule in certain quests. I'll give you that. But overall, my experience and my feeling with like a tighter narrative and having those side quests that help build that world or at least entertain in that world is kind of what I always gravitated towards, which is probably why Witcher 2, which is probably why the Dragon Age series, why Fallout New Vegas appeal to me, because they are tighter narratives, even if they have like semi or full-on open worlds where you can just do whatever the heck you want. That's where I kind of find where I think things work a lot better for me. And that is a major, I would argue, a major point against Witcher 3.
I think it's a dumb argument to make anyway against Fallout 3, because the best thing about Fallout 3 is literally the environmental storytelling and the terminals. A lot of the side quests are just like, go get in a fight with these guys, or... No, pretty much. In New Vegas, you've got better options, but like, in 3, like, how many of those side quests weren't like, these guys are assholes, go fucking kill them.
You had a side quest in Fallout 3 where you had to rescue a sheet of music for an old woman who would then play it on the radio.
Yeah, I know that one. I was thinking about that one too. I can't think of many more. I can think of Nuka-Cola.
You have the Oasis side quest where you actually meet Gerald again, and it's a choice of either killing him or letting him be green. You have the side quest where you actually go back to Vault 101. You have the side quest with the ants and the little boy that you find as the orphan out in like one of those. I think it was Grey Ditch.
That one turns into combat. That one's combat.
It turns into combat, but it does have a decent choice at the end where you can actually rescue the kid or just leave him to die or put him in slavery or something like that. There are a lot of ones that turn into combat. But there's like little choices in between those that help with the decisions that you do. Big Trouble in Big Town is a quest where you have to rescue somebody first from like super mutants or bandits or whatever it was. You bring them back to this town, and then you can teach them how to defend themselves in like 4 different ways. And if you do that and they defend themselves and they're successful, that's the reward. And that's all based off of your character build and skills. In a lot of ways. Are they, like, super deep? No, but they are memorable because I'm literally reciting them off of a memory from playing that game long ago. So.
Well, that game came out, though. It was kind of a different time then, too, wasn't it?
2008. So, a 6-year difference between that and Witcher 3.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, game development, like, Witcher 1 was already out. Witcher 2 would be out in about a year or two from there, 2010, I believe. So like game development wise, it was around that time period. So I would say it is a part of that era in some regard.
How many times have you replayed Fallout 3 though?
Recently, not much, but last time I
total.
Multiple times. I 100% achieved it at one point.
Yeah, well. Isn't that kind of obvious then that you would remember such things?
Sure.
Like I know you'll if you do a replay of a game, you're doing all the quests if you like the game. I mean, Dragon Age is a witness to that one.
That's true.
You've replayed those games ad nauseum, and you always go through all the quests. It's like, of course you're going to remember them better. You finished Witcher 3 once.
I did finish it once.
And you did it begrudgingly at the start. There was one dramatic one with the werewolf, and you were so whatever about it.
That was one of the That was one of the more memorable ones, though. I remember the werewolf one.
Which other ones do you remember?
The only other one I remember is the one with the ghost that we had to bring either an ancestor or somebody who was related to the people who killed them to that ghost.
What about the one in the well?
I don't remember it too well.
What about the little town that got overtaken by corpses? I think they were called. Like, there's lots of stuff going on, but, like, you haven't replayed the game enough. And the game is huge, so fair enough. But there is that whole stuff that you like about Fallout 3. It's in The Witcher 3 as well, but you wouldn't remember them because you've only played through it once. And Valen is a depressing place, but it's not post-apocalyptic.
Well, true, it's not post-apocalyptic. It's also not really nice to look at either, as you said multiple times.
I mean... Neither are nice to look at, but it fits with Fallout 3 because it's post-apocalyptic and also it was new.
Very true. It was new at the time.
It was the first post-apocalyptic shooter we've really played that anybody's really played.
I don't want to mainstream.
I don't want to include. Yeah, but then I don't want to bring in like Call of Duties in there because I know fuck all about them. Maybe they've had one too. Who the fuck knows?
Well, you gotta understand.
Do we even count COD Zombies?
Well, you gotta understand. Like games like Wasteland and the original Fallouts, as well as a few others, were that post-apocalyptic thing, but that was incredibly niche.
We're not bringing Fallout 1 and 2 into this. Neither of us are fucking are good enough to discuss that.
Well, I mean, I played all of them, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, what does everybody else think? What is our verdict here for best game in the series? What do you think?
Yes, chat, talk to us. Oh, wait, this is a podcast.
Well, so what's our verdict then?
We say that at the end.
Okay.
The verdict is inconclusive.
I say so.
Because I think it's... also, actually, I want to point something out, though. You've been arguing against Witcher 3 using Fallout 3?
Well, you want me to use Witcher 2?
Yeah, actually.
I did in the beginning. I pointed out how Witcher 2 was a more tight story, how the narrative is a lot more consequential.
The individual quests.
I
feel the smaller quests were forgettable in 2.
Chicken Man.
Okay, you get that one, but honestly, I couldn't bring him to face myself. I don't even remember. You know that elf who was an alcoholic? What the fuck was his quest? I don't remember. What was he about?
The elf who was the alcoholic?
Yeah. Did Dietrich?
Dr.
Dre?
Oh, Dieter.
Right.
You also have the elf that tricks you after you rescue her, who tries to kill you. You also have fighting the...
We're taking that one. We tricked you. Now we're going to try and kill you. That's not a memorable quest.
It actually is, because they subvert the expectation of how the elf would actually react in that situation. You also have... Which was she's still... You save her, but she's still going to murder you because fuck you. Because that's how elves were, or being betrayed. You also have the quest at the end of the game where you're in the catacombs and you're trying to solve the puzzles... And your party is made up of, like, those 2 merchants you met, like, in the first chapter, and then they fucking die because they get killed by the traps in the catacombs, and you fight the golem.
I barely remember them, and it doesn't sound all that interesting.
It was interesting because the reward is the mage girl who was part of Nilfgaard, who you could literally sleep with or... let her get away with it or not with what you find in those catacombs, because it was looking for, like, ancient artifacts and stuff.
Well, I sure didn't put that to memory.
I mean, you're asking me, like, this is what I remember from Witcher 2.
How many times have you replayed Witcher 2?
2.
That is an important point. 2
times.
Twice?
Twice.
And 2 times?
Yep. First time I played it, I went with Roach. Second time we were on stream, we went with Yorvith.
Fair enough. I still don't think they're as good. I feel like I got basically little out of those side quests.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, to teach you about the monsters, they tell you to go buy a book.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't be bothered to do it organically, which they did in 3. And I'm always going to be like, that's great. That's good. That you organically learn about the monster. That's a great idea.
The monster hunting felt a lot more special in 2 than 3, I would also say, because of the more tighter structure on it as well. You only had, like, 3 main monsters per chapter, 1 per chapter in the game to deal with. Instead of, with The Witcher 3, it's like, the notice board type of thing where you got multiple places to go. And it's like, insert monster type for here. And I'm pretty sure we fought every single monster, like, twice or 3 times for various different scenarios they put you in. And that's what I mean by it blending together a little bit. At the very least, they made the harpies, they made the gargoyles, they made those giant bug fucking things. I forget their name, though. I'll feel a little bit more special because they were tied to that specific chapter. Plus, then you had, like, the big contracts for the other big things that you had to kill, like the chapter bosses, in some cases. Like the sea monster, Leviathan thing. And then you even had chapter or game, like, long quest lines, like the hidden cache on the destroyed boat from Chapter 1 going all the way to Chapter 3 with the things you find about it. Memorable, I would say arguably more memorable compared to Witcher 3, where it did feel very structured and the same with very little deviation to it.
So it's more an argument for like a streamlined experience as opposed to an open world experience. So basically you don't really love open worlds as much.
See, it's kind of a catch-22. I do love open worlds. But an open world that actually has interesting content or memorable content to it is what really catches my eye, and very few games have done that for me. Again, Oblivion's probably gold standard. Yeah. Witcher 2 is not an open world. Witcher 2 is a very structured, arguably linear experience, or at least it's the illusion of open choices when you have like the linearity to it. But
I hated having to hoof it over everywhere, though.
True.
I kind of sucked in, too.
Sure, I mean, I can get that, but the maps are not, like, super large in 2 compared to, like, in 3.
Sure, but, like, if you were running... Like, I remember in the forest, if you had to hoof it somewhere and you were in the forests, If those bugs were there, they were not going to let you pass. They were just going to be fucking bothered about the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care for that. I want to be able to, if I want to go somewhere, I wanted to be able to just go. And then I could do that through fast travel, do it with the horse.
Yeah, I mean, like, the inclusion of the horse helps with, like, and the fast travel help with Witcher 3, but by design it needs that too. Or else, you know, it would be just, like, immersive walk all over.
I would have liked the fast traveling too.
Fast traveling too could have worked, but they don't... Again, like, the maps are not super crushingly long, and... like structure.
Yet despite that, a pain in my ass in certain areas.
Admittingly, the first area is probably the most egregious of that, to be fair. Like, because that swamp area with, like, the bugs is a tough nut to crack. I'll give you that one.
Technically the second, but yeah. Hey, honestly, I don't look forward to getting around in Witcher 2 because of those annoying little humps. Which I could ignore in 3 if I wanted to, because they were just placed there for you to, like, hey, I want to kill some wolves. Well, guess what? You can go find some wolves, and if you don't want to, the wolves aren't going to be there. Or the bugs. And it's like, cool. I like the choice. I like the choice of having some organic, well, I don't know. What the fuck do we call it when Skyrim does it? What does it have, like, random events? Sure. When you can just ignore random events.
Yeah, the random events, you know, that kind of, like, they're scripted but not really type of thing, right?
Yeah. I like random events, but I like it if I don't have to interact with them. I could give Skyrim shit for that, but we're not talking about that today.
We'll save that for another day. So, inconclusive?
Inconclusive. I think we both knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, this one I knew was going to be probably the biggest one of the questions we have.
Because you, yeah.
Because of me, it's all my fault.
I like three better than 2, and you like 2 better than 3 because you're a psycho or something. I don't know.
Or am I the psycho, or are you just following the crowd? Anyway.
You're not making an argument against you being a contrarian here.
I'm not trying to. Anyway.
Because I call you out for being a contrarian lots of times.
You do. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I do. But I genuinely feel that 2 is the better game here. And I'm not trying to be contrarian about it. It's honestly just, like, structure-wise how I prefer.
That's okay. So what do we do when we pop this off? Do we say, like, do the same thing with the echo? It's like guilty! Or I say, not guilty! Or I say, inconclusive! You say it too.
Sure, I guess we could do that.
So, with an echo. Yeah, no, you say it too.
Alright, you ready?
Yeah.
Alright. Guilty. Not guilty. Inconclusive.
There you go. I'll add an echo to all of them if I remember to.
Alright. So we'll save that for the end.
It'll be funny.
So you want to introduce number 2?
First we say yes. Inconclusive on this one. Inconclusive!
Inconclusive.
Whatever.
Oh, we have to do it at the same time?
No. We could do that in post if I remember to.
Okay.
Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll be lazy. Maybe you get to find out. I almost said chat. You get to find out, listener.
Yes, our fellow listeners. Reminder, by the way, just going to plug us again real quick. You can watch us play video games on twitch.tv/partygoblins. We played Witcher 3. We're currently going through Veilguard. We just finished Judgment. And we got more coming up soon. So definitely check it out.
I mean, cool, but like I think at this point anybody who knows us knows where we're coming from.
Yeah, but you might get that random like listener from like, I don't know, Turkmenistan listening to us and saying, wow, these guys are cool. You know that.
Okay, fair enough. I was going to suggest we do it at the end, but whatever.
Yeah, we'll do it at the end, too. Anyway, you introduce number 2.
Next subject. Is Blood and Wine better than the main game? My vote is yes.
My vote's yes.
It was a close one. Well, cool.
Yeah, that was easy.
Then we get to compare notes.
All right. What do you got? Or do you want me to?
I did say that. No, it's up to you. Do you want to go first? Because I went first.
Yeah, we'll trade off. I'll go first this time.
Sure.
So, Blood and Wine, is it better than the base game? My argument is always yes here, and there's a lot of reasons why. The key reasons I got: you have a much more tighter narrative. Again, going back to what my preferred like strengths are. In terms of, like, the location and the environment, it's a lot more colorful and vibrant, yes, but it's also a lot more interesting because we're actually starting to see, like, a more, I don't want to say pleasant side of like the Witcher world, but definitely a more unique side of the Witcher world where we
optimistic.
Optimistic is a good word for it, I think, because you got a lot more of that chivalristic tone. It's not played for laughs fully, but it's also one that actually fits with the politics that they bring into it. And with that, you also have that with that stronger lore and presentation, all of this kind of coalescing into three things that it does better. I already mentioned the tighter main storyline, which also, I would argue, has a lot better characters than most of the main game. You have the fact that the side content doesn't overly rely on a lot of the tricks and mechanics that they used previously. It feels a lot more unique. I remember a lot more of the side quests in Blood and Wine than I did in the base game by a mile. And they're also a lot...
Remember that one? Remember the one with the wine cellar where it turns out that the guy was cheating on his wife?
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
It was. And that's a good example. Even the small ones and the silly ones, like trying to find a pair of like brass balls for a statue. You can't forget that. And the third reason is kind of a more esoteric thing, but it's a throwback to expansion pack levels of additions to a game.
Yeah.
And when I say throwback to expansion pack levels, I don't just mean like terms of size of content. I also mean the fact that it's a lot more experimental than what the base game was doing. They really showcased a different side of the world, different side of the mechanics, a different side of Geralt, the main character, and they were able to bring a lot of cool ideas into it with a more unique story than the main campaign. So that's my argument for Blood and Wine.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, a sign of a good development team is when you can see their internal improvements across iterations of what they've been working on. Like, what people didn't like about Witcher 3, they would try to put as much of those improvements into Blood and Wine, which is fucking neat. And I feel like a lot of those improvements you can also kind of see in Cyberpunk, if we want to
go down that route.
That list. If we want to go down that route. I don't have a list of that, but I feel like that's a thing that happened. Where they tried to refine the whole idea of you're not playing a blank character, you're playing an existing characters, and your decisions that you can pick make sense within their character.
Yeah.
And instead of having a more locked character like Geralt, you have V, which is a bit more broad of a possible character. So they still experimented with the idea, but they gave you a bit more of a broader perspective to play with. Which is, I feel like that was a criticism that they had with Witcher 3. I don't have evidence of that, but I feel like they must have heard that and said, okay, here you go. It's a Cyberpunk game, but your choices, you can be pretty much anything within reason. Yeah. You're still pretty much a script kiddie. You're not really a netrunner.
Geralt is kind of funny because he's basically Commander Shepard. He is a pre-established character in a lot of ways. You can play
pretty much.
You can play around with, in terms of like the role playing. You can play around with how he might react to things, but that's about it. And of course,
yeah, it always makes sense within Shepard's feat.
Yeah.
Thing is, with those three games, Witcher 3 is the most locked one. You can't be like an archer or like a horseman or like be a Mameluke or whatever the fuck in The Witcher 3.
A Mameluke? He's Italian now?
Mameluke. Isn't Mameluke like a horse archer or something? I just remember the name from Age of Empires 2.
No, no, it is. It's just like a very Italian thing to say is, hey, you Mameluke. I'm sorry, but go on.
Okay, fair enough. That was a good distraction. Like Geralt can only be a Witcher, but like you could be anything in Mass Effect. And you could be a biopic.
Biotic, no, not biopic.
I know. I wanted to say it. You could be a biotic, you could be sniper, you could be this. And I mean, we've both played it. You know what I mean?
That's another one that's on the list.
It's the same thing with. It's the same thing with Cyberpunk, where you could be anything. Not really a netrunner. I do want to clarify this. You're not really a netrunner in Cyberpunk. You're basically a script kiddie, because actual netrunners do more wicked shit. I just wanted to put that out there. But my arguments.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said it was a tough call to make by itself because without considering the main game, it feels like a very short game. If you take Blood and Wine as like in a bubble, it is a bit short. Like a downsized Assassin's Creed game in terms of length, not quality. We're not arguing quality here.
Okay.
But the contrast is what makes it work. Because I feel like Blood and Wine, the brightness of Toussaint, wouldn't work as well if you didn't have the suck from Velen. Because Velen sucked. But Velen was, realistically, it was a realistic suck. It was, war-torn. We were literally at the edge of where the war was happening.
Yeah.
And at least I think that's the case, pretty sure. But if we weren't at the cusp of battle and Nilfgaard pulled back, we were very close to it. Velen was in the suck because of Nilfgaard. That was what was happening. So it had to suck. It still sucks though. So
I would agree on that. Like environment-wise, Velen was not the best.
A deserved kick in the ass is still a kick in the ass.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. But yeah. Oh, I did bring this up. The improvements are where this is proven best. Improvements across everything that The Witcher 3 did.
Yes.
Fucking love that. Monster hunting was more interesting. Well, across the board. You can watch the VODs, or maybe we'll publish the VODs. Who the fuck knows? You've watched the players, or maybe not. But in which case, we liked it. Hey, yeah, anyway. What was my net? Yeah. I think that's about all I had. Yeah, by virtue of comparison.
So we're
pretty much.
We're basically
because we're comparing it to existing Witcher 3 that it is as good.
Here now,
because otherwise.
Think? All right, that's actually a question. Then you think if there was no Witcher 3 and Blood and Wine was Witcher 3, it would not be that good? Or?
It wouldn't be as good. It would be, if anything, marginally. It would be marginally better than 2 because it would probably be comparable in size. I just think 2 would be longer, but it would be comparable in size to 2. It would feel like they, I don't know, improvements that have been concluded. People would still complain that it wasn't long enough.
I see. I don't know if complaints about length are something that would actually be a problem, especially if the content is actually really good. You're right. Is it long? No, you can beat the main storyline realistically. Probably 10 hours.
We did it in 10 streams or something, or 5. I don't know.
Like 6 or 7. It was because we did kind of putz around with other things too. But we
and you had a good time.
I did. I had a very good time with it. But no, the length I don't think matters. I think if you can make a tight narrative RPG that's 10 to 15 hours long, or 20 hours with all the content, including going around places and doing stuff, you made a good RPG. It should not matter if it's 100-hour epic.
You know what? Sure. But this is a Witcher that we were talking about. This is CDPR. They had something to prove.
True.
If they tried to prove themselves after Witcher 3 with just Blood and Wine, people would have been disappointed. They wouldn't have hated. I wouldn't have said they would have hated, but it would have barely reached an 8 by itself. But now it's getting really close. To me, it sits at a 9, and to you, it sits close to a 9. You said an 8, closer to a 9 than a 7.
Yes,
if I recall correctly.
That is correct.
Without Blood and Wine, that would have been sitting at an 8. I mean, I would have been in your place instead.
Okay,
saying closer to a 9. But Blood and Wine makes the whole thing better. It's good that it's there. Honestly, little bit of Phantom Liberty vibes. Not as huge an area that you get with it, but Rob hasn't played that yet, so no spoilers.
I also don't own Phantom Liberty yet, so we'll have to fix that someday.
I thought you bought it.
I thought I did too. Apparently I didn't.
Motherfucker! I was gonna buy it. It was on sale a couple of times, I think.
At least, you know what? I'm gonna double check after this podcast because...
Yeah, please do.
I'll let you know.
Hey everyone, just a quick note from editor Kenny here. In hindsight, he did have the expansion pack. He just forgot. Oh well, back to the podcast. Yeah.
So, verdict, is Blood and Wine better than the base game? Guilty.
Yes, it is. Guilty.
Guilty.
I guess we shouldn't say guilty. We should say confirmed.
Confirmed.
Myth confirmed.
Oh, we're terrible at this.
Fuck it.
All right, you ready for
That's what makes it real.
Yeah, number 3.
Are you gonna do it?
I'll start us off.
Are you gonna say the title?
Witcher 3 has been accused of Gwent being bad.
I guess I should start with this one.
Go right ahead, because I got thoughts.
Oh yeah, no. You got your vote. You got to say yeah. You're probably gonna say yes. I'm gonna say no.
I'm gonna say yes.
Oh, all right. Well, my argument is, first off, it's optional. I feel like if you're gonna complain about Gwent, it's like complaining about the dice in 2. It's like you don't have to interact with it. That's my argument. The first one. Mechanically, it fits perfectly and intuitively in the game. Mechanically, I'll get to that. The quests and purchases can get you cards. Small amounts are found in random vendors, indicating it's a hobbyist nature. And large amounts or specific cards are often gained from dedicated characters, which indicates huge-time hobbyists. What would you call them? Fanatics?
Yeah, like experts or hobbyists or whatever. Yeah.
Huge hobbyists.
Yeah.
All it stumbles on for me is its integration in any narrative. but it's barely present in the main quests. It's rather offhanded in side stories that don't really involve it too particularly, and it is playful in any content that does focus on it. And it is always marked clear. So if you fucking hate Gwent, it's always marked out. And if the name doesn't mark it out, it'll say it in the objectives. So it's like, I don't care about Gwent. You don't have to. You want to know how I know that? Because I hated Gwent the first time around. When I first played Witcher 3. You didn't know that, did you? No, I ignored it completely.
I did not.
My game was unaffected by that. It barely mattered. I still bought them because I was swimming in money. Because I was playing on normal. So it was like, I'm sitting on almost 50k. What am I going to do with all this money? It's like, I'll buy some cards. Who cares? I think it affected 2 quests. And one of them had a sort of pseudo-bad ending. But it was like a character died that I didn't really care about anyway. Because we'd never see them again anyway.
Yeah.
I think it was in Novigrad. Where if you don't do the card stuff, you kill one extra person who happens to have a name. It's like,
It affected 2 major quests because it was a major focus of it, but there were also a lot of quests that it had as like a part or a portion of it involved in the quest itself as an option. So we should be clear about that.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean main quest?
2 major quests, not main quest. Like we're talking about like big side content. You know, like the tournaments. There were 2 tournaments you basically were part of.
Yes, but that's dedicated Gwent. You see tournaments like, I don't care about Gwent. Don't do the tournaments.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. All right.
And also, it was a collectible card game in an area where similar games were either tie-ins to existing CGGs like Magic, which I've played one of, the video game, and it was a cut above boring. I wouldn't say it was boring, but I did not feel memorable about the Magic the Gathering game.
It has not aged well.
Yeah, no. Or they were failures. In particular, I was thinking of Scrolls, and I'm blaming Bethesda for that one, because they were like, you don't get to use the name Scrolls, so we're gonna sue you. It's like, it's just an object. Why, Bethesda? But they did. They sued Scrolls into the ground. It was a CCG. It wasn't even like a pure CCG. It had like a board game kind of side to it, but they got sued into the ground.
Yeah.
They were indies, and that's why I have a grudge against Bethesda. So, having a large and thorough minigame within a whole-ass game tends to be received very well, I think. Especially if it's wholly optional. Because you can ignore it and I can enjoy it. So, you know...
Here's what I got. First off, the big bugbear... Well, there's a couple of big bugbears for me, but the big bugbear in the room is that it's basically a modern card game in a system and in a world where it really does not make any sense. The fact that all of the cards are based off of characters we know who are living and are like either consequential to the story or were characters from previous Witcher games is kind of silly. And that does...
It's a bit dissonant.
It's a massive dissonance, and I can overlook it personally, but like if we're gonna also like argue like the immersion and everything else is like really key in terms of like the world and whatnot, that doesn't fit. The card game itself is actually very shallow, too, which is another problem. Like, we did not really... We had a specific strategy that we did on stream with building our decks and very rarely deviated from it. And the fact that as a distraction, sure, it can be fun, but as a challenge, it never was one. There were a few times where we lost because we just had really bad luck or got caught off guard, but there was only a few times where we actually had people with challenging decks against us. That it felt like...
It was always meant to be playful, I feel.
I get that it could be made playful, but then you have it tied to quests, like we talked about, like those major quests, like the tournaments, which are silly, but, you know, still have sort of like narrative stakes to them in terms of characters and whatnot. Or they're in part of side quest content where doing them is kind of important to like a preferred outcome to the quest. Like, remember in Stone Prisoner, the wedding. Like, you need to play Gwent in order to progress properly.
Stone Prisoner?
Yeah. Or Heart of Stone, excuse me. Heart of Stone. The wedding in Heart of Stone. You remember that?
You didn't need to. You could have actually... you could have said no, pretty sure.
Okay. Well, it seemed like the way they were structuring it and like what the whole measure of what that quest was about, we needed to play Gwent at least once. Winning or losing didn't matter. What mattered was that we actually played the game.
The dwarves. You're talking about the dwarves. Yeah, no, you literally could have said no. Because that's what I did. And then I looked it up and I was like, there were rewards associated with it. That's when I kind of started to regret that I didn't invest in Gwent. Because there were some rewards associated with it.
And that's the other thing. Like, they're definitely...
Mainly the hats.
Well, yeah.
The ears. Because I thought ears were funny.
The hat was funny.
I wanted the ears.
Hey, we got it organically. But, that was like one of the few times where we purposely lost, I think. But anyway... The whole point, though, is that, like, the rewards associated with it, as funny or as serious or as goofy as they can be, like, the actual gameplay of the mechanics they have for Gwent was just incredibly shallow and vapid. There was not really as much strategy necessarily as you would think. Can I
compare it to something?
Go right ahead.
Caravan.
Yeah, no, I agree. Caravan
I feel like Caravan's worse.
Oh, it is worse.
Caravan's even more shallow.
Well, Caravan's worse because that was all stuff that barely made it into the game, first off.
But also, they're kind of in the game for the same reason. It was a neat little thing that they put in.
But the one thing that Caravan does is that it complements the setting of the game a lot better. Because Caravan is a game where you can play with any random cards you find and build a deck from that. Gwent is a game where... I won't
argue that one doesn't fit.
Yeah, Gwent is a game where if I go to, like, a fucking... Are we allowed to curse on this podcast? I guess we can. Where if I go to a...
It's our podcast, fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them. Alright, if I go to, like, if I go to, like, a card shop or, like, a comic book store, and I see Gwent as, like, a booster pack on the shelf, those cards will look exactly like they are in the game. And that really bothered me, more than I think it probably should. But it did.
Wait, booster packs where? In real life?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, they look like literal Magic the Gathering cards, just with Witcher characters on them. And that's what I mean. Like, they are kind of just... It's very incredulous to me.
Your two arguments seem to be, it's got the narrative dissonance, which kind of... Its own unimportance kind of feels like is downplayed by that. Mm-hmm. And then you've got, like, that's a shallow minigame.
Yes.
But then, like, what card game do we have in an existing game that's not shallow?
The only one I can...
That was before 2015.
The only one I can think of that was not shallow because there was actually some strategy to it, although it wasn't really well coded, was Pazak back in the KOTOR games, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2.
Yeah, I haven't played that. Was there a CCG element to it?
No, sort of. It was literally... It's basically you're playing 21, but you have plus and minus cards. So you draw...
And you collected them?
Yeah, you can collect them. And they actually had, like, small side quests and things where you can play with people here and there. It was never an important part of the game, though. It was just an interesting little side venture that you can do. And the whole...
So did it have face cards with existing Star Wars characters on them?
No, it didn't. They were just basically number cards. So they could be... The number cards could be like +3 or -3, right? You get 4 cards in your hand, and then the deck draws. You draw like a 7. You draw 3, so now you have 10. The goal is to get to 20 without going over. So if you have like the 10, then you draw like a 5, right? 15. Now you put in that plus 3, you have an 18 and you stop. And that's the strategy. Your hand does not replenish. You only have those 4 cards to use. That's the strategy. It was very basic, very simple. And it was memorable in that regard because it served as a nice little distraction without like emphasizing too much in terms of reward except some money and some experience points. That was it.
Okay, question.
Yes.
What subject matter would you put in Gwent then to replace all those named characters?
The only one that... See, the idea for me would either you make all the characters like generic characters,
which would have been kind of lame.
Could have been kind of lame. Or you base it off of maybe some myths or legends from the setting.
Okay, that's kind of a problem because it's based on books.
Yes, I know.
Most myths or legends are straight up just sorcerers, and like 5 of them.
All right, fair.
And they're in the game.
I know, fair enough. But, like, that's what I mean. Like, the monster deck probably was the least, like, dissonant because they're monsters. They don't really have anything to them. The only other thing I can think of is, like, yeah, you could do, like, ancient myths or, like, ancient creatures or something like that. You can do the sorcerers. Maybe having the sorcerers named, like, based off of modern sorcerers is kind of not a good idea. Maybe go for the more ancient ones that people might know about, something of that nature. Ultimately, though, you're right, it is optional, it is not necessary to play, I give you that, and I will also concede the fact that it's kind of not obtrusive in terms of how they implement it, like, side quests, if you want to do them or not, you can.
Like, here's the thing, we don't really have, like, 500 years of lore with the Witcher universe in general. We've got, like, 200, and a lot of that was told from like the perspective and like surrounded Geralt's tragedies, and adventures. We don't really have a whole lot of to go on with like big sorcerers, and the ones that we do have been really put in the games as a result. Well, so it's like it becomes a balancing act between like, do we get like lame generics or do we get like cool named characters for those cards, which in the end turned out to help, like, I don't know, fun, but like help create an existing free-to-play Hearthstone contender that ended up failing. But
sure, but isn't that also kind of cynical too? That, oh, look at this convenient game we made that's based off of this card game that was just in our like Game of the Year type of thing. Isn't it wonderful how like we just take what was there and expand on it?
People are asking for Gwents. People are asking for Gwents.
I get,
absolutely.
Fair enough, they might be asking for it, but the way they set it up, it really was kind of convenient too. And I fully admit I'm being very cynical there.
It is a bit cynical. People were definitely asking for like a Gwent standalone. I was... Well, I want to say I was there, but like, you know, social media was a flutter about it being like, oh, I love Gwent, but like, you know, I wouldn't want to keep like 100 gigabytes of Witcher 3 installed just to play Gwent because like, you know, I want to play other games because memory space was even more at a premium then.
Yeah. No, I agree. But yeah, like, that's my thing. Too modern, like, very shallow in terms of its mechanics. And while it could be a fun distraction and it is optional, there's really very little challenge and honestly very little incentive outside of like those specific quests to do it. Unless if you really care about collecting the rare cards.
Does that make Gwent bad?
I will argue it makes it bad because it doesn't make it interesting or fun to play.
You're arguing for forgettable. I don't know if that's an argument for bad though.
Well, what's worse? Like something that's bad or something that's forgettable?
Bad? For a game that's supposed to be peak, it would be worse.
I mean, I would argue that if something is really that...
Like Dice was bad in Witcher 2, to be honest.
It was bad.
I'm glad that was gone.
It was bad, I'll give you that. But again, like some of the things I said are problems with Gwent were not problems with the dice. It made more sense to have it in the universe the way they presented and did it. It was still shallow as hell, but it was still shoehorned.
I feel like you're weighing a lot on the narrative dissonance of it, even though it's not even like it does not force itself on you.
It doesn't
after maybe like once, just to tell you that it exists.
You're right. It doesn't force itself. I agree with you with that, but that doesn't take away the fact that it is distant.
So how distant can it be from the universe if you're not like interacting with it? Are you making an argument that you can't leave it be because you're a completionist?
Well, that's a whole other problem. Like, there might be people out there that probably can't leave it be because of that. And I'm not even saying that's an issue for me. Because we didn't complete it, if you remember.
We kind of did. We did all the quests just about.
We didn't. We never got all the cards. And that was like one of the last quests we never completed. There was a couple of quests we didn't complete with Gwent.
Oh yeah, but the game doesn't tell you to get all those cards.
It does. There's a whole quest about collecting all the cards with Gwent.
Oh, those. But didn't you have to like? Well, you have to go track them down in merchants. But yeah, even then, did it bother you that you couldn't complete that one quest?
No. And again, it's kind of more to the point. Like, I feel bad being forgettable, even if it's like good mechanics, is still bad in a game where a lot of things are supposed to be super memorable and unique.
But that's the thing, it's forgettable to you, though. It wasn't forgettable to a lot of people.
True, but that's why we have opinions and why it's on trial now, isn't it? So what do you think?
There you go.
So, inconclusive?
Yeah, definitely. I will defend Gwent.
Right.
I love having mini games in my games. I like Yakuza. Of course, I like games in my games.
I like games in other games too. I just like them if they're like well crafted. I guess I don't know. I'm very hard to please in that regard.
A little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, is Gwent bad? Inconclusive.
Inconclusive. Womp womp.
All right. So you want to take the next one?
Yeah. The Baron does not deserve your pity.
Ooh. This will be interesting. I think he does within reason.
Oh shit, that's interesting.
Yes. First, I'm just going to say it. The whole Baron questline is the best quest in the main game writing-wise. In my opinion.
Wow, okay.
And this is why. The Baron himself is the best part of the quest because he is the perfect, flawed character. He is a bad guy who's not trying to be bad, but because of his flaws and his mistakes and everything, he did things that were so horrendous, it has broken him. And the whole quest,
Can I interject?
Oh, go right ahead.
My opinion is literally replace bad guy with soldier. We're ending up the same spot, but my argument is literally that. I've got lots of notes, but go on.
No, we might just be in agreement right off the bat. The thing that makes it work is that it's very clear he does care about his family. It's very clear that he wants to make amends for his mistakes. But he also is the type of character that doesn't know how to make those amends well, and doesn't really know what to do, even when he's called out on the things he did. No, I didn't peek at all.
Did you peek at my notes?
No, we just happen to be in agreement here. And the best part about this quest is that there is no right or wrong answer to it. You could give the Baron many chances for forgiveness to an extent, with how he forgives the unborn child, how he tries to forgive his wife, his daughter who was estranged to him, for basically beating them and getting drunk and doing all these nasty things. And you hear the remorse and regrets and the things he wants to try and atone for. But the way he goes about it before and even after Geralt is arguably not the best way to do it. And at the same time, it's a resolution where it's up in the air whether he does get that atonement. Does he deserve your pity? Yes. Does that mean you can forgive him for what he did? No. But
it's not ours to forgive.
Exactly. It's really up to the family to choose to do that, and for the Baron to make those changes to forgive not only himself, but the people around him for how he behaved. Perfect, flawed character, and again, this is my opinion. It is the best quest in Witcher 3 by a mile in terms of its writing.
Okay.
Well, that was easy.
Is it? Okay. I don't have much to add. I do have something that I want to exemplify with, using as an example.
Example, okay.
I'm hoping I remember this correctly, but when COVID had just started, I think it was COVID there was a reason where police had to like cordon off a lot of Belgium, a lot of Brussels, for safety reasons. I think it was because of COVID. It's getting a bit conflated. But the point was, there were not enough police officers to help guard these places. So they had to call in soldiers from our defense to help guard these places and to help. It was mainly in Brussels. They had to actually guard stuff and tell people hey, you can't be here, you can't be there. And what happened was, police are trained to deal with people, but soldiers weren't. And after that happened for a couple of months, we started getting complaints from the soldiers themselves who were like, this is not what I signed on for. I wasn't signed on to sit here and just guard stuff. I was taken on because I wanted to guard and go maybe do stuff in a country somewhere, to go be a soldier. And that's kind of what's happening with the Red Baron. He's a soldier through and through, a mercenary leader.
Yes.
Not just that, but he's basically a mercenary leader of a mercenary groupment. You can tell because they're fucking filthy in the Crow's Nest or whatever the fuck the place is called. And they are running mad in there, drinking, because what the fuck else are you going to do? You don't have TikTok yet. So so they're running themselves crazy, just holding a fort. Can we call it a fort?
I don't know.
Fortification?
Is it a fortification?
I don't know. We're going to call it a fortification. They're holding a fortification for Nilfgaard, but mercenaries don't join a mercenary band so that they can just go sit there and do nothing. They love drinking and all that stuff, but deep down, they want to go do war. They want to go fight. They want to get hired to go into battle. And they're not getting to do that. And especially the Red Baron is a fucking soldier through and through. A mercenary soldier, sure, but he's a soldier through and through.
Yeah.
His answers to most of his problems was violence, because that's what he was taught. When you go into the army, you do not get trained to be a reasonable person. You get rewired to go be a soldier. And when you go retire, then they don't teach you how to unwire yourself to not be a soldier at home anymore. And putting the Red Baron in that fortification, giving him nothing else to do, it's kind of like the same thing where it's soldiers don't have an off switch for being a soldier. Once you're made a soldier, you're pretty much a soldier until somehow you can deprogram yourself, which wasn't much of a thing in the medieval ages. So there he sits, going absolutely mad, drinking. So not to excuse what he did to his wife, but all the man knew was violence.
Yeah.
And he didn't have anybody telling him to be different. Because remember, a lot of sexism wasn't because people were necessarily evil. It's because they didn't know better. It hadn't clicked in their brain that, women can actually be equals. That click had to happen. Especially to men who are in very patriarchal roles, just manning the roles.
Yeah, hindsight, that's a fatal flaw now, obviously, but back then nobody really thought about it.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Of course.
So, nobody told the Baron, that it could be different until Gerald came along and started, really judging him for it, and he was like, fuck, he's right. And then what happens to him, if his wife is gone, is dead, and his daughter estranged, he has nothing grounding him anymore. So all hope is gone. He has nothing to really think about, to hope for anymore. He just has a war that he can't have, and alcohol that has brought ruin to him. So it's obvious that why he kills himself. He has nothing else in him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the intelligence to go, you know what? All of this sucks. I'm going to go be a farmer and change my name. He doesn't have that in his brain. He's not smart. Smart people don't turn into soldiers, usually, But then when he has his wife, when he has the idea of healing his wife, and Geralt tells him, there's not a whole lot of hope. You can maybe go do it. He's he zeroes in on that because he has a task. Soldiers are task-driven. So it's he has still something to hope for. Fuck it, let's do it.
As fleeting as it might be.
It's very fleeting, but he's a soldier. Soldiers are not made to be decent people. They are made to be killing machines. Or machines of war. Let's put it like that.
Even taking that part out, even taking all that part about the soldier out of the equation there, too. Just the fact that it is a flaw and that the thing that he tried to... that he felt would center him would be the family that he basically abused because of his flaws is where the tragedy comes in as well. The trauma that he created, not just for his family, but for himself.
Yeah, he just didn't know better.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever told him he could better. Who of his mercenary party was going to tell him, hey, don't be so mean to your wife?
Oh, none of them would do that.
Tell him that.
None of them would do that.
And especially not the lieutenant, because he's a fucking piece of shit who doesn't give a damn about anything. He's glad that he's in charge now.
Yeah, yeah. And he makes things worse for the people around him, too.
Yeah.
So, verdict, I guess.
Big old D-bag.
Yeah, big douchebag.
Verdict. Yeah, verdict.
The Baron doesn't deserve your guilty. Doesn't deserve your pity?
He does deserve your pity.
He does, so not guilty, I would say.
Not guilty.
Yeah.
I guess.
Or
we gotta rewrite these fucking things.
We gotta rewrite these questions.
We do. There should have been an ending in Blood and Wine where Detlef and Sylvia both live. You make it sound like you haven't prepared an answer already.
I did. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Yeah. Say it. Say what would you think? Yes or no?
I will say no.
There shouldn't have been an ending in Blood and Wine where Detlef and Sylvie both live.
No, there should not have been.
I for sure was. I thought you were going to say yes because you love being able to do everything in a playthrough.
I do. I do love. I know. I do love trying to do everything in a playthrough, but here's
respectable. I agree.
Okay, here's why now, at least for me. The story needs to be tragic, because if it doesn't have any tragic angle to it, it loses its bite. No pun intended, because vampires.
No, slip that one right past me.
You're welcome. If you think about it, the way the story can go, we either lose. I thought her name was it? What was her name again? Not Sabrina. Was it Sabrina?
It was Sylvia. I actually wrote it originally as Anna, but it's technically Anna Henrietta and Sylvia Anna. They're both called Anna. It's confusing. I had to look it up.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So Sylvia, we know she is basically the beast in this entire story. If you think about it,
a little bit, yeah.
She is the true beast of Belclair because she uses this guy, who happens to be a vampire, for her bidding to get revenge on petty... I'm sorry for the dog in the background. And get petty Wolf, I know. And get petty revenge because she felt she was slighted and mistreated by a family who didn't like or trust her for whatever reason. She uses this guy. This guy loses his mind trying to do her bidding and save her and protect her and keep her alive. Knows that the people hunting him are both friends and people who are sympathetic to his cause, but still goes after her once he finds out about the pure betrayal of everything. And rightfully so, because he's pissed at her. So either she dies by his hand, or Sylvia dies because she can't let go of her own anger and hatred and other things. And then you have two dead bodies on your hands with Detlef and Sylvia, and maybe even Henrietta, or Anna Henrietta.
If you can't get Sylvia to forgive Anna Henrietta, which requires going into Fantasyland...
yeah.
Did you know this?
I did not know this.
When the ceremony happens anyway, because we still killed Detlef.
Yeah.
And we didn't... So basically, if we don't fetch Sylvia, or, if you pretty much don't... If we do the vampire route, and we get Detlef killed,
yes,
full on,
yes,
Sylvia does not forgive Anna Henrietta, and what happens is, when they go to hug, which is why the moment there was, like, pinching up a little bit at that moment,
yeah,
she was going to grab one of the hairpins of Anna Henrietta and stab her in the back with it, and then she would get shot with a crossbow.
Yeah, they both die then.
And they'd both be dead.
Yeah, that's
both Anna Henrietta and Sylvia would be both dead.
That's what I'm saying.
If Sylvia dies... Yeah. But if Sylvia is killed by Detlef, then Anna Henrietta does not die, and she is so pissed she sends you to jail.
Yeah. The story is, no matter what
Still
the story...
House, though.
Yeah, I guess. No matter what, the story has tragedy tied to it. You have either the vampire Detlef dying when he really, even though he's committing like murders, he probably doesn't deserve that fate. You have Sylvia dying because she can't let go of her hatred. And you have Henrietta dying because of her sister's hatred. In any of those combinations, and one of them is incredibly dark, where all three of them die, by the way. Mm-hmm. But in any of those combinations... That's not the one I got, thankfully. But in any of those combinations, it's appropriate to the story that's told. And I will also argue that at least for the stream, the outcome we got where Detlef died, but Sylvia and Henrietta would forgive each other, is as close to like a storybook ending you will get in terms of where this story was ever going to go. Because you do have that moment of forgiveness. Yeah, you do have that moment of forgiveness.
Both make sense,
yes,
to be honest.
Exactly, and both do make sense.
I'll get onto that, actually.
Yeah. You do have that moment of forgiveness, you have that moment of redemption, and at the end of the day, it's Sylvia who is the monster that needs to be redeemed or destroyed. More than Detlef, who is the physical monster. And the tragedy of it is that to get to that point, you know, in a more logical way, you have to destroy Detlef. And in a lot of ways, it also, like, ruins Regis's life. And Geralt, you know, leaves as the sort of, like, middleman between all of these, no matter what happens, with a sadder circumstance. You know, even if, like, Detlef lives, ultimately, and the sister is destroyed because of what she did, you know, Henrietta, as you said, won't forgive you, throw you in the dungeon and all that other stuff, and that just makes things even more tragic for Henrietta, and Detlef then is probably in of himself completely wanted and marked and no longer, like, acceptable. There's no Disney ending to this, for lack of a better term. And I love that about this. I love that about the structure of this quest line. I love that about, like, where it goes and how narratively that does make sense and makes it more powerful. I will contend and argue that the main quest line of Blood and Wine, even though it's shorter, is a lot stronger than most of the main quest lines in the base game because of its payoff and because of the structure of where it can lead. And that's where I would go.
The story and Blood and Wine was free. Like, they had almost free reign with it.
Exactly.
There was one thing that happened in Toussaint. In the main story of The Witcher 3, they did not have much free reign.
Yeah.
Ciri was the main, what's the right word, MacGuffin?
Yes.
Like, twice. And generally, it's kind of pretty much in character for the writing to be like, somebody is the MacGuffin for this. We have to go chase after her. And 2, it was first, like, Triss and...
Yeah.
Basically Triss.
Yeah, and, well, Letho. Letho as well.
Yeah. It was the driving force, and then in 3 was, like, Yennefer, you've got Ciri...
you're still chasing something. You're still chasing something in Blood and Wine with Detlef. But I think what makes it more unique is the fact that
but it wasn't something that was like predispositioned in the past in the books.
Exactly.
From what I know about them.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I'm.
The Witcher 3 main story had to kind of fit with the flow of the books, and Blood and Wine didn't need to be. It could have just been CDPR's baby. For as much as it is.
Yeah. No. Okay.
It just had to adhere to like a couple of things. One being Dandelion is not allowed in there, and that Anna Henrietta knows Geralt, and thinks of him positively in the beginning. That's basically all they had to adhere to in Blood and Wine.
That's fine.
So they had freedom. That's kind of why but I just wanted to explain that.
No, I mean, that's a fair argument, too. Obviously, not adapting from the books is always difficult, and the fact that, if I remember correctly, you even told me this, that the author of the books doesn't like the games because he feels like they deviate too much, or something like that.
He's gonna start writing again, apparently.
Oh, there you go.
So, but that's happening.
No, if you're a fan of the books,
games
go
happen
for it.
after the main. Games happen after the books.
Yeah.
So it's not like the Witcher 3 games are really based on books, just on the universe and the characters of the books.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So
like
it's a weird situation. What the fuck's gonna happen with the new book? I don't know. Maybe they'll just be like, fuck you, all this canon shit in the games? Fuck you.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Who knows?
But anyway.
CDPR still has the rights.
So, what are your thoughts? Yeah, go for it.
My points may be in an NG plus situation. Kind of like with Max Payne 3, where if you get the secret ending at the hardest difficulty, Mona gets to live.
Interesting.
Something's a little bit of a treat, a non-canon treat, but like, of course, in the main game, of course not. But like, NG plus, it is an established mode. Could be fun. Besides that, pretty much everything I agree with. Like I compare it to Night City, where it's like wrong place, wrong people. Except it's not wrong place, it's wrong universe, wrong people.
Oh, okay.
In The Witcher.
What do you mean by that? Wrong universe, wrong people.
It generally everything's kind of raw in the Witcher universe.
I see. Okay.
There's always like the world is too cruel for any choice to come with no consequence. No good deed goes unpunished, so to speak. And that's also reflected in the major factions in the Witch universe itself. There's no good faction. Nilfgaards are assholes in their own way. The North, they're all assholes in their own way. There's no good guy faction in the Witcher universe. Even the witches themselves, back when they were a force, were fucked up people. The mages were fucked up. Novigrad's fucked up. We've seen that.
Yeah.
So it's not super grimdark. It's not like 40k grimdark where everybody's evil, but I don't think there's anybody who's really clean in the Witcher universe who's not a fucking child.
Yeah.
Maybe Ciri, but Ciri's got a little bit of dirt on her too. Not a lot, but just a tiny bit. A speck. So there's that. Also, I would say that having an ideal ending would be like a conflict of idealist constructs. And the way I explain this is, if you save Detloff, it is respected the way things are with the various races. You're kind of respecting the vampires as a race, because they didn't ask to be pulled into this.
Yeah.
They are pulled into the games of men. Consistently, vampires, whenever they are a problem, like we should say higher vampires, thinking vampires.
Not the regular beasts, yeah.
No, like Ekimaras, they are not. I don't even call them like vampires, but we mean higher vampires are always pulled into the games of men, as I like to say. And whenever they are about to retaliate for it, they do seem to give fair warning. Is like a consistent thing. All the vampires who are thinking are pretty much clear on where they stand if you continue with an action. Detloff, the big one, the real who can instantly kill you, whose name I forget, Mr. Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And the and the ginger. The ginger is also like, if you kill me, all these kids are just gonna die.
Yeah.
Because who's gonna care about the orphans? I don't even have to kill them. They will just die because they have nobody. So it's like the vampires want to play cut and clear, despite other universes playing vampires as like conniving little fuckers. In the Witcher universe, they like to play cut and dry.
Yeah, they're very specific in what they want.
Yeah, they're specific, cut and dry, and Gerald can respect that. Because at the end, Detloff was fucked over majorly. He had almost like really no agency in what he had to do. He was blackmailed, and then
he was.
Turned out he was tricked.
He was the tragic figure in the entire monster. Thing. He's not even the tragic monster. Anna's the real. Like I said, I'm just maintaining it. Sylviana was the tragic monster.
Sylvia.
Yeah, Sylvia.
Sylvia deserves a consequence to her actions, is what I wrote. She deserves a consequence to her actions.
Yes. And while it might be good...
on the other hand...
Go.
The other idealist... Oh, if you want to say something, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The other idealist construct of this is, if you save Sylvia, it signifies a preference to preserving and even saving Toussaint's serenity and peace. Because that is also Geralt's job. Is that he's a Witcher? He is supposed to defeat monsters or handle monsters to preserve the peace for the human race. Detlef, for as right he was, as right as Detlef was, he was still a threat to mankind. He had to be dealt with. Even before the murders, he seemed to have a hard time not radicalizing himself. Detlef was definitely someone who was an inch away from radicalizing.
Yeah, he was always on that cusp, basically.
He was on that cusp, and somebody pushed him over. But he was on that cusp. What for? Don't know. But people tried. But he was on there. Either choice makes sense for Geralt and his own morals and fits in with the realistic unfairness of the Witcher's world. Is what I end on.
Yeah, that sums it up, doesn't it?
Pretty much.
So, should there have been an ending in where both of them live? No. So, not guilty, I guess. I don't know. Whatever it would be.
Not guilty. We will work on those questions.
Maybe we should just say yes or no, or change the questions next time. All right, I'll introduce the next one. And I think I know how we're going to go with this one.
Does it have good combat? Mine is yes.
Mine is no.
My argument is, around 2015 and before was not an excellent year for games that sit in this genre. Like, what did you have for action games that had open world and had this level of dramatic writing?
Action games?
I wrote... for action game, the closest I could find was Dark Souls 2. For writing, I had AC Black Flag. I guess you would include 3 with that, but I hate 3. But, you know... Assassin's Creed Black Flag was good writing.
Black Flag is the better game. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Black Flag was good writing. It just had, and good performance too. But it had a lot of that, Ubisoft fluff with the open world bullshit. And then Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, you have those games that you haven't played them yet. I was also a competent contender, but the action is good and the story is good enough, but it didn't have as many RPG elements. And it wasn't the main takeaway feature of it anyway. The main takeaway feature being the rival system.
All right, we're talking about 2014, before Witcher got released, right?
That was my 2014 list. I looked at 2015 as I literally went to Wikipedia and said which were the award winners of 2015. I found nothing worthwhile in there.
Yeah.
To compare it against Witcher. And then I went to 14. And then 13, I found AC3.
I'm surprised you didn't mention Inquisition for Dragon Age, because it's not technically action combat, but it's definitely more hybrid in terms of that action-y style.
That's exactly why I didn't include it. I feel like the combat is action-y, but it's not that level of action-y. I feel like, I've said this before, the action in Inquisition feels like Guild Wars 2 action, where it's like...
You did say
it's technically... It's MMO, but action-y. It's not full-on action gameplay. You still click like a move, and then you place it like it were an MMO, but like it kind of fits to a controller.
I see.
Kind of like that. It's like an action MMO fit to a controller, as opposed to a full-on action game like Dark Souls, Witcher, Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor. Those are like integrally solid action games.
Okay.
Or as or mechanically programmed to be solid
action RPGs specifically, let's be fair.
When you pick those games up, you know you're playing an action game. But when you pick up Inquisition or Guild Wars 2, you get the action, you get the responsiveness, not as good when pressing an action button.
Yeah, it's hybrid. It looks like and
hybrid.
Feels like an action game, but it's really more mechanically different than that. Yeah.
It's got that hybrid MMO feeling ass controlling to it. It's like you press a skill, you summon a skill, and then you go do the placement of the skill, and it's like it does, So it's hard to explain a feeling, but I don't feel like Inquisition is as much of an action game as it still is a little bit of
I get it.
An MMO, a little bit of the origins and 2.
Well, all right. Here's the question.
The focus is the skill.
Here's the question then: what makes Witcher 3 actually have good combat then?
This is gonna sound like a dig, but once I got good at it, it really flowed.
Fair enough. All right.
It's like, yeah, like you said, like the blocking's useless, but I was good at it. I knew how to do it. Like if you didn't force yourself to get good with Dark Souls, I feel like you would have said the same thing about it. It's like the action isn't good, but it is good. You just have to get good at it. You have to play the game on its rules and then try to be better at it as it expects you to be. Mm-hmm. Like you have to engage with the oils with the potions, with the decoctions. You have to use your science correctly. You got to think in a moment. You got to like, oh, this guy's gonna attack. Can I block it? Yes, sounds like I can block it. Do a block right at the right time. It's a fucking intercept. You fucking cleave him in half. And once you're done at the end game, you're so overpowered that most humans just get cleaved in half if you sneeze at them. Like, achoo, oh no, there goes my head.
Yeah.
You know?
Here is my counterpoint to that, is that there is actually not as much strategy in the combat as you think. Because everything's already baked into a very specific weakness that is exploitable. Either through signs...
It's not...
Or through
it's not about the tactics, though. It's about the preparation. And then once you had your preparation...
True.
You bring in the skill.
But like
that's pretty much the mix.
But even when I was playing it and actually doing the preparation many times with the combat... Like it.
Most of the time you forgot about it, though.
Sometimes I did. You're right. You're right. I forgot. I fully admit it.
I had to remind you most of the time.
I fully admit.
And you were playing on normal.
Oh, hold on. Well, again, I fully admit it. The challenge and the strategy that I would expect in the type of game like this with that type of combat, I just felt was, quite frankly, not really there. Yes, you need to use certain signs on certain enemies. Yes, you need to use oils and decoctions at times. You're right about all of those. Maybe, and going for weaknesses, that was the thing we looked up the most. What bombs, what signs, what oils would be used on these creatures to make things easier. And yes, they did make things easier in most cases. But, and this is the real but, once you got that in, like, there's no deviation in terms of your tactic. It's sign, bomb, oil, ////////. Or crossbow every once in a while. Or, whatever it is. It is very bare bone in terms of it. And yeah, you got, like, the flurries for the parries, and you got, like, the cool, like, killing moves you do whenever you do a critical hit. You can build like that like we did, and we saw a lot of heads rolling, which was friggin' awesome.
What else would you put in it?
This is where I'm going to just say it. I thought the way Dark Souls did combat was better in terms of that style, because there was a lot more strategy, and you're right. I had to get good to do...
But it couldn't be.
Hold on. But I had to get good to even survive in it. Witcher, I can button mash through 90% of the game. And that 10% was only for, like, boss creatures or a few creatures where really you just need to either, like, for example, throw down a Yurden on, like, ghosts and just / dead.
You should.
Or you need to throw...
play on Death March sometime.
Fair point.
The game kind of went too easy on you. If you go on Death March, then it will actually be a challenge, but it won't be overbearing. I've actually said this during the streams. On Death March, if you engage with all the mechanics, the game will be at a normal level. But if you don't, and if you just button mash, the game will punish you hard for it, because you will die in 2 hits.
Sure, but difficulty should also not be like the barometer of making it better either, to be fair. Because if we're playing the game, whether it's on normal or we're playing it on the Death March or playing it on like storytelling mode or whatever, if it's still sort of the same like ebb and flow, and we just need to pull our punches back a little bit in terms of like, I can't do like a button mash on this guy, but if I do / back and parry, / back and parry each time, and you do
That's mainly bosses.
Yeah, but even with the bosses, that becomes ad nauseum because it's the same flow for every boss regardless of the boss type.
Sure, but then you have like human enemies on Death March who, well, if you try to do that, they'll start blocking you, and while they're being blocked by you, their friends will try to hit you in the back.
Yeah.
Because I died a lot to that. I had to like learn, but that was actually tactics, ironically, where I had to like keep my positioning in mind, because an enemy could block at any time, leave me open, and then a guy would hit me behind me.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was like 2 hits, or it'd be two guys attacking me at one time. So that would be past the Gwen, and then another hit in there. And sometimes they would ignore the Gwen pushback if it was like a shield enemy too. So Death March does actually require you to think a little bit. But I wanted you to go on normal because I thought like, okay, if he gets pushed back too hard, he's gonna hate the game even more.
Well, that's not even if that was the case of like my own personal preference on the game. I, again, will contend that the difficulty should not be a contributing factor to enjoyment of the combat. Because if I have to go on Death March to enjoy more strategy or tactics in terms of the style of the combat, I'd argue that's a mark against the game because it should be playable with different or same strategies regardless of difficulty. If everything I'm doing in normal doesn't work on like very hard, fair enough. But if I'm going to enjoy it more on very hard because I have to play by the rules of what they're trying to teach me, and it's the same mechanics anyway, that's going to get monotonous very quick. And that's really the
but it's not. I just told you that it's not.
See, I disagree. You were button
spamming through normal. And I just said it will be different in Death March, and you said if it's the same thing anyway, that would be bad.
Well, because it's going to be
it's
going to be the same moves. It's going to be the same flow. There's very little.
No, but the flow is different in Death March.
I don't know, man. There's very little deviation in terms of what to do against all these enemies.
You don't have an install button.
And this is kind of...
The flow is absolutely different.
And you
have to think about your positioning.
I also want to be clear, this is also a problem with all the Witcher games, because I think all 3 of them have very weak combat in general with how they set it up. Even Witcher 2, which I like a lot more. Like, it is sort of the same flow. It is sort of the same problem I have with it, where...
Yes, remind us that you like Witcher 2 more.
Again, I like Witcher 2 more for narrative reasons, not for mechanical
Yes, remind us again! Say it one more time and go for a hat trick.
So Witcher 2... No, I'm just kidding. But in all, like I said, like the combat to me became very monotonous quick. Like strategy-wise, there was not as much deviation to it that I was hoping for. Yes, your argument is I put it in the harder difficulties, you'll get that deviation. But if the strategy for beating the bosses is always the same, hit with weakness, slash twice, back up and block, or parry or whatever, or some deviation of that, that's not variety. That is... this is going to sound horrible. That's basically kind of cheesing it a little bit to get through the combat. And that's not necessarily always the fun way or fun method of doing it.
But that's basically Dark Souls point for point, though.
It is. Now, where Dark Souls, I think, does it better is that there's no difficulty slider. If you want to engage with the game, you got to do that. And this is one of my problems with Dark Souls, is that was always something I didn't like, which is that get good mechanic of the combat.
So the argument is more against like having difficulty options.
No, the argument is that the combat kind of was monotonous and didn't really do much in terms of variety in how you can approach a situation.
It was made harder. So
exactly.
The problem is the difficulty options.
Even if
it should have just been hard from the start. It should have been Dark Souls from the start.
Well, I don't even know if that's the way to go with it. I honestly think they could have revamped the entire combat system a little better.
But into what? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, what would you want out of it? Do you want Geralt to be a mage? He can't be a mage.
No, I know that.
We are locked into into a universe here.
Well, in the vein of things, maybe less flashy version of it, but there could be a little bit of a Monster Hunter vibe in it, where the preparation comes into play a lot more than just sort of the rock paper scissors thing.
Less flashy, you say?
Yes.
You haven't played a whole lot of Monster Hunter yet. Monster Hunter gets flashy, dude.
I know. I'm saying a less flashy version of Monster Hunter. But anyway.
Aye.
But like what I'm saying is like Monster Hunter is all about preparation, like having the right tools for the job, right? You have a sense of that in hold on. You have the sense of that in Witcher 3. I will give you that.
Skill is still king in Monster Hunter. Like, you do your foods, you do the right food, sure, and you get the right armor pieces to like get some resistances. But at the end of the day, what the hell? At the end of the gay festival.
Oh God, we're now canceled. First episode, no one's gonna listen.
Yeah, skill is still king in Monster Hunter. It's all about skill, about learning your weapon. If you don't know your weapon, you ain't gonna do shit in Monster Hunter. So you pick a weapon that you can like vibe with, you learn it, you practice with it, and you do it against monsters that are easier.
You don't really,
hence the kind of curve with the monsters.
Yeah, sure, but
the hardest ones are at the end.
You don't really have a curve here with Witcher 3. You're stuck with two weapons. Your regular weapon for people and your weapon for the monsters, and they're both likely going to be swords. Weapon,
yeah.
Stat-wise and stat boosts kind of become important for that sometimes. And really, the only time strategy really kind of came into play was when you're fighting some of those creatures where they actually have literal defenses against what you might normally do in terms of your tactics. Like the armored fucking armadillo things were the problem. Like with that,
I feel like as soon you should give Death March a try, honestly, and you'd probably get a different idea of it.
Perhaps
you'd be saying like this is closer to Dark Souls or maybe like Sekiro, where you're like locked into like one sword playstyle. Except in Witcher 3, you can still kind of change your sorting playstyle based on what skills you get.
Perhaps, but I will also contend that I shouldn't have to play it on Death March to actually get that enjoyment either. That should not be something that I should be forced into to make the combat more tactical and make it more fun. It should be already kind of baked in the beginning, and it really wasn't.
I feel like it's good to have options, because some people are games journalists who don't know how to shoot a zombie in Doom 2016. Yeah, I'm still making fun of that.
Why? That's so old hat and stupid. Come on.
I like making fun of it.
Oh,
it's that simple.
I see.
It's so funny. That man didn't even know he could turn his goddamn camera. What the hell was going on there? Jesus Christ. Ay.
Let's be real. A lot of people don't realize it the first time they're playing something.
I don't know. Dude, I was 6. I don't know. No, I don't know. I can't tell you if I've never known how to not control a camera. My first game was Rise of the Triad in terms of like shooters, and I think my brother played it, and we didn't even use the mouse. We used the arrow keys to look around. So the idea of looking around was already super fucking obvious. So it's like, what the fuck was that then? How can you not get the idea that you're in a first person perspective? Maybe turning is a bit of a thing. In fairness, they were just turning to look in the other corner of the room, as opposed to the guy who was attacking them.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I don't know, like at the end of the day, it just was very monotonous. I didn't find a lot of strategy in it, and the strategy that was there was very specific every time. And the fact that you're effectively fighting the same 24 creatures with the same weaknesses, or the families with the same weaknesses every time. Yeah, great. You can prep and like do that really well.
What did you expect then? What did you want to get out of it? Let's go from that angle.
I was hoping for a more detailed, or at least a more like visceral experience with the combat. It had flair to it when you got like the kill cam stuff, but that was all like just critical hits and flashy, like.
Go deeper into visceral, because that's a bit of a broad word.
Yeah, alright. So, we're preparing. We need to know the weaknesses. They show us the weaknesses. But we could also maybe have viable strategies that could be off of that weakness. Do we need to use Yurden to hit the ghosts? Like, for example. Because otherwise, without it, there's no point in even fighting the fucking things, because you can't hit them. Do we need to use the decoctions? Now, the way the decoctions are implemented was very poor, but the idea behind them of giving you bonuses is very good. So that needed to probably be tweaked a lot more as well. The one thing I will say that the combat does better is the fact that everything is hotkeyed now. So you can just switch to your magic sign, and you can switch to your oils and your potions and everything else when you need to on the fly. And that's a good improvement, especially compared to Witcher 2, where it's all from the menu and from meditation and super paladin. But I do feel that also is something that works in Witcher 2's favor in some cases, because I then can go into a combat situation and actually have to prepare ahead of time for that specific rock, paper, scissors. Imagine using Yrden on ghosts in Witcher 2, but us not knowing that the ghosts were there, right? So we would have to come back, meditate, get everything ready to fight the ghosts, and get all our equipment we need to fight those ghosts to then kill it. Whereas in Witcher 3, just like getting everything on the fly as it is, makes it a lot easier to just go and take care of, and also makes it quicker, less interesting, and a lot more boring, I would argue.
I will say people have said that Witcher 3 is a bit too easy. Especially when they interact with all the elements, Death March was for them too easy. But these are all also people who said that, who were like major, Dark Souls players. So it's like, what do you, what are we arguing here? Are we arguing that games shouldn't be easy? Like,
no, I'm not arguing that at all. Well, that might be what you're arguing. I'm arguing that even if it's on hard mode, the combat will always still kind of be very monotonous. And I don't think that is a good sign of a decent combat system. RPGs are kind of weird like that because you will always have monotonous combat, but if you don't feel it, then it's doing something right. I felt it with Witcher 3, whereas in Witcher 2, I felt it, but it wasn't as bad, I could argue. Whereas in something like, let's say, some of the other games you mentioned, like Dark Souls, I definitely felt it there. It got kind of monotonous for me, but it's by design. You have to get better at the mechanics of the game to even progress, so you have to engage with it. You're forced to. Or you mentioned Middle-earth. I haven't played those in detail yet, but you mentioned how it's very similar.
Imagine 30% Witcher 3 and then 60%, let's say 40-50% Batman Arkham games.
Well, okay, the Batman Arkham games are also an example too. That's a game where
combat-wise.
Well, that's an example too. Like, there is a free-flowing aspect to the combat. There is a way to do combo, and they telegraph combo and all that stuff. And whether or not you like that type of style is obviously a choice, but the way that could flow in and out with combat would also make moment-to-moment fights with the mooks a lot more interesting than I go up, slash sword, do special move, cast Quen 90% of the time so I don't get hit type of thing. Which was more or less...
That's a balancing issue.
Well, that's it.
Quen was way too good, and all the rest wasn't just nearly as good.
But that's not a good sign of... But that's also that's also a bad sign for combat systems, too, if it's like balanced in a way where certain strategies or only one thing is viable.
I feel like... Are we arguing against, is it the best combat ever, or is it like good combat? I never said it is the best ever. I'm still sticking with Dark Souls for that one.
Sure.
But I think it's good. It does what it needs to do, which is Gerald being really good at swords and facilitating the whole monster investigation and being a vehicle for getting to story beat to story beat.
I agree with you that it's not the best.
You can argue that other games that we have bad combat. Okay, let's bring one in here, like fucking Mass Effect.
True.
Is Mass Effect's combat good?
It got good. Mass Effect 1, no, definitely not. It was Mass Effect 2 and 3 where they really refined it and actually made the combat better.
I would not call Mass Effect's combat better than Witcher 3.
Well,
if we're saying enjoyment.
Well, let's be fair. To be fair, though, it's also different styles of combat, too, because we're doing a lot more long range with the Mass Effect. But go on.
Fair enough, but the whole enjoyment... I enjoyed the combat less in Mass Effect, but thankfully that was not the main takeaway. That was the shenanigans with, the RPG elements of, punching that interviewer.
Yeah,
3 times over,
of course. But you can make the same argument for Witcher 3. Then, like, I'm not enjoying the combat as all, but it's a means to the end of getting through many of the quest lines and the parts I do enjoy, which would be the narrative bits.
So what I would argue then is that it's not less of like the combat being bad, but that you subjectively don't like it, which would make you, not a negative vote, but like an what do we say with the
inconclusive?
That your vote would be inconclusive because you're not partial to it.
I guess I can say inconclusive then, yes.
I mean, if you disagree, you could still say no. I'm trying to like zero in on that to see if that's what's happening here.
No, I mean I think that's probably where we could leave it. Would be inconclusive for me at best.
So then it would default to the conclusion being that yes, it is good combat. Though, it's kind of like, whose line is it anyway? In case it wasn't obvious yet, these final judgments don't fucking matter. We're just having a podcast talking to each other because we like talking and having opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is all for fun, man. So.
We wouldn't be doing this if we couldn't stand each other, if we didn't want to talk to each other. We just chose to have a podcast around it for once.
How about I put it this way? The combat is serviceable, but could be a lot better.
Yeah, I will definitely take that.
There we go.
I mean, that's why the modding scene was super fucking active for like 2 peaks, or like a couple of years apart.
Yeah.
Which was fascinating to see. Irrespective of DLCs, I think they had peaks when the DLCs each came out, of course, but like major peaks that were not really tied to anything. The modding scene just peaked with them, which is weird to see, but it's good. It's really good ones too. Of course, combat overhauls, as you would expect.
Yeah.
Overhauls that let you play as any character, let you mix and match a character if you like. I've recently seen a mod that lets you play as a mage now, as one of the mages.
Really?
Completely different gameplay. Yeah, oh yeah. Plays completely different. Like from what I saw was a little bit more keep away with actual spells and stuff. I only saw like a couple of seconds of it though. It was very neat though.
All right.
They're doing a lot with mods.
All right, want to do the last one real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Last one. On trial.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are the Witcher senses overused? Yes. All right, that was easy.
I'll go say it.
Sure.
You'll probably agree immediately. But used frequently in the main game's side stories, it really wears out its welcome, especially when it's not as easily used on horseback, which is the main thing I hated, and I think one thing that they fixed with mods, meaning that you're kind of just hoofing in a wilderness most of the time when you're using your Witcher senses. And also, wolves being heard from a far distance is a fun canonical detail, but it turns into a needless distraction with little use after like the 50th fucking time. You've been like, oh, there's wolves nearby when we were streaming it so many times. It's like, no, they are like 2 clicks away. You could just hear them. It is annoying.
Go ahead.
But and it would be useful if you could use the loot of the wolves, but no, wolves are fucking useless. It may be a little bit of XP, and then what you get from them is like their liver that you can eat. But you've already got a full inventory of like a banquet for kings in your inventory that doesn't weigh anything. It's fucking useless. So whenever I run into wolves, I just exhaustedly sigh, which is why I was glad that I had like a horse or fast travel. And also, holding it constantly to follow a track is annoying. Other games, I think one of the Batman games,
it was like a toggle, right?
You had your detective mode, and you found not even just the toggle thing, but like if you spotted what you needed and you got your trace, you could get out of detective mode. If it was like something that required a bit of travel, you could just follow it. And in Witcher, you need to keep that shit on, which is annoying. And it is required far too often. It wears out its welcome. It was a neat little thing, and they put it in because, well, there weren't a whole lot of games doing it yet, so they were really pushing it forward to be like, look at this neat little thing that we did. But it has aged poorly. So, and also, box standard side stories in the main story seem to be, well, hold on. What did I write here? Yeah. A lot of the side little missions, especially in Velen, basically boil down to find the trace of this monster who killed the villager, and then go deal with it. And that portion of go find it feels like it never changes. It switches up with scent and noise, and they all wear out the
I looked it up.
It is not fun.
I looked it up to see if I can find a definitive number, and I couldn't find it. But how many quests actually forced you or required you to use the Witcher senses to actually do the quest? And, well, the estimates say about 80% of the game. Almost all the quests that, like the contract quests or the investigation style quests, were very stale. It was the same or similar deviations with very little behind them that led to a single place for conclusion. You're basically doing tracking markers without a tracking marker. And what makes it more annoying is the fact that it is the same rigmarole every single time you do it. Every quest follows the same structure. It was monotonous.
It was
functional. I will give it that it was functional and it made sense lore-wise and all that stuff. And I will say, like, the few times where investigation was involved, more specifically versus, like, trying to follow stuff, I thought it was slightly better. But it's still the same thing every time. And in a lot of ways, I will argue that this is on par with the Radiant quest designs on things like Skyrim. The only difference there is that Skyrim is random location doing the same thing, whereas...
And exactly. It puts a marker where you need to go.
And, like, really, the only saving grace I can say about all these quests is the mini-stories attached by the townsfolk you're talking to. But a lot of that is all... Yeah, that's the important part, but a lot of that's also the most inconsequential part, because by the time you get there, a lot of it doesn't matter in the long run. And it becomes sort of this morass of forgettable bits. Like, I couldn't name or tell you my favorite one of those type of quests because they're all the fucking same.
Yeah, but it's also technically it kind of fits in the universe where it's like, these are the woes of the average villager. Like, they're never going to be interesting because they're just little villagers who have boring fucking lives. So that technically fits, but the whole Witcher sense is being, you know, boring to use that didn't need any fitting.
It just
in there.
it made it padding. It made it longer than it should have been. In that regard.
Yeah, I feel like if you just found one trace and then you could just hoof it even on your horse, but I'd have to keep it on, would have been so much better. But no, you have to be in it. And then the game turns gray and drab, which makes the whole thing worse.
It's visually, it makes sense because you want to zero in on, like, specific color. But you're right, like, artistically, it's kind of like, I don't want to see that much. But when 80% of your quests are going to require you to do that at least once, or multiple times, or for extended periods of time, yeah, that's a problem. So I think we're both in agreement on that one.
Yeah. Even the treasure digging for, like, the Witcher sets that didn't really require it, you need to use at least once just to find the insignia. And it's like, fuck off. That didn't need to be a Witcher sense thing. Just glow it up. You know? Just glow
So are the Witcher senses overused? Yeah.
So maybe...
Guilty.
Yes. They're fucking overused. I'm hoping in Witcher 4 that it either becomes a toggle and it takes a back seat, or it's like we said, you get the scent and then you can just go. You just go. I mean, honestly, how did they do it in Cyberpunk?
Cyberpunk, you had the interface that you can do, but that was only done, like, in a more of a puzzle sense, where you can interact with different parts of the world, or to, like, scan, like, guys and stuff like that. So and also Cyberpunk, also to its credit, is first person, so it makes a lot more sense. You can see that as well, through like your own character eyes. So like there's less of a like a shtick with it. But they had it more compact in like almost like you're using more like a puzzle type setting to like attack a situation. So if I wanted to sneak into a building, I can open up shutters or distract guys or do this, that, and the other thing, all that kind of stuff.
I'm just trying to cope and hope that CDPR understands that Witcher senses or any system like that. Like I'm just going to call it detective vision of Batman vision. That's kind of overplayed and we could do without it for majority of it.
I think the even though I don't like the pinging of it necessarily, I thought like something like Inquisition did it better, where it's just like I press the button, we get a ping, something pops up on the mini map, and I can go to it if I want to.
It's a very MMO way.
You're harping on that MMO way a lot, but like I know it might be an MMO way doing it, but it is efficient. It is in
its benefit this time though. It is in its benefit. Fair enough. It is an MMO like of doing it. Or a Ubisoft. I feel I could say like a Ubisoft way of doing it, but that would feel like a jab.
I mean, anything involving Ubisoft would be a jab.
It's just like, tell me where to go. So that's why.
Can we say fuck Ubisoft together? I don't know.
But what did you say? Ubisoft?
Can we say fuck you Ubisoft together? Or
it's our podcast. We don't even know where we're gonna put it. Maybe we'll put it on SoundCloud. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. We really need a website. We got to get a website again.
I mean, it's honestly, even if we get a website, we should put it on SoundCloud anyway.
And connect it to the website.
Sure. We can do it.
There you go.
We can do it.
But that's it. That's 7 talking points about The Witcher 3.
Yay! We did it.
Look at that. We did it. And it's only been 2 hours. Hey, not bad.
Told you it'd be longer than 1 hour.
I honestly thought we could maybe do it in an hour and a half, but we went to town on some of these. So, to recap.
Oh, yeah, we got a recap.
Let's do a quick recap. Best game in the series. Is Witcher 3 the best game in the series? Inconclusive. Kenny thinks yes, I think no. Is Blood and Wine better than the base game? Yes.
Yes.
Both of us said yes to that. Is Gwent bad? Inconclusive. Kenny thinks no, I think yes. The Baron. Does the Baron deserve our pity?
Yes.
Yes. We both agree to that. Should there have been an ending where Detlef and Sylvia both live? No. We both agreed on that. Does it have good combat? Inconclusive. Kenny, yes versus no again. And were the senses overused?
Yes.
Yes. Now, what do you think, listeners? Do you agree with our assessments? Do you not?
Put it in the relevant comment section.
Yeah, any relevant comment section, you might find this. I don't even know if they have comments on SoundCloud.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. And just as a reminder, we played through Witcher 3. I said it before. We played through it on our podcast. This is our podcast. We played through it on our Twitch stream, twitch.tv/partygoblins. And you can join us by watching us on twitch.tv/partygoblins. We also have a Ko-fi that we should plug as well. Go to Ko-fi, look up Party Goblins, join, and if you feel like you like this content,
the link is on our Twitch. You can find it there. And join our Discord. Yeah. The link is there too.
Also, I was about to say that as well. We also have a Discord set up. If you want to hear more and you have ideas, join our Discord. Next time we come back, we got another game up. We're going to have like 5 to 7 questions.
It's going to be Bad Rats.
No, it'll never be Bad Rats. I will quit if that happens. And, yeah.
Donate $500 for Bad Rats.
If you donate $500, if one person donates $500, I will do Bad Rats.
You sluts.
All right, I'll make it. I'll tell you what. If you donate $1,000, I'll do Bad Rats and Bad Rats Show.
You're an absolute slut.
I mean, that's how all the other content creators are, except that many of them are grifter assholes who are just trying to do rage bait. I'm just trying to be funny with it. Anyway.
Exactly. And remember, you will love each other.
Yes. Be good people out there. And until next time, Court is adjourned.